Hello, everybody. I am Lucia Matuonto, and welcome to the Relatable Voice Podcast, a talk show where my guests and I talk about relatable everyday situations, books, and the environment we live in. Remember to subscribe and follow the podcast on social media so you can be notified when a new episode is available. Let's begin. Today, we are cruising to New Jersey to chat with Dr. Jason Delgandio. Jason is a college professor, a scholar of communication studies, and the creator of the 20-Minute Vibe Project. His work helps people understand and articulate the vibes and energy they experience in everyday life. He's here to share his insights on everything from science of vibes to the personal experience that have shaped his journey. Welcome, Jason, to the Relatable Voice Podcast.
Hi, Luisa. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited to. This is a subject that catches me. Before we start talking about vibes, do you mind sharing something interesting about you?
Sure. I guess I'll start off with my love affair with travel and international travel. Right?
Okay.
So I love to travel. I love to meet new people, eat new food, experience new social norms, new cultures, new customs. I particularly like international travel.
Mhm.
So in recent years, I've been to Portugal twice. In Portugal, I've been to Lisbon and Porto. I've been to Spain, I believe, three times in total,
Mhm.
twice recently. I've been to Madrid, been to Barcelona twice, and been to Valencia once. I've
Mhm.
also been to Paris one time, and then many years ago, I was also in Amsterdam. And I really love the overall European vibe. The rhythm of life there is very different. People take the time to enjoy their coffee, to enjoy good conversation, to enjoy a glass of wine, to enjoy the sunsets. It's less about work, 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 and busy, 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 and more about let's enjoy being alive. Let's learn to laugh, to love, to enjoy each other, etc. And so I really do love Europe at large and just travel in general.
Yes, I agree with you. And I'm in Spain today. It was a long trip to arrive here in New Jersey. Which country has the best vibe in your opinion? I mean, between Portugal, Spain, and France.
Well, I don't want to cause any controversies here, but I wouldn't say it's the best vibe. But the vibe that I enjoy the most would be Portugal at this point in time. So I first went to Lisbon, I think back in 2018. And then just last summer, we went to Porto. And the people are just very inviting, very down to earth, very welcoming. They're more than happy to greet you, to say hello to you. The level of stress there seems to be very low. I actually asked someone when I was eating dinner in Porto, I was like, "Do you guys ever get stressed out here?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't really know what you mean." I was like, "Well, we just had a conversation in English, so I think you understand the word, right?" But it's his way of saying, like, "Look, just take it easy, enjoy yourself, etc." Now, I do have to say though, Spain and Portugal are very similar. So the overall Iberian Peninsula there, I think the food is wonderful. The overall culture is amazing. When I go to those countries and those cities, I just feel more laid back and more in touch with myself.
Yes, the vibe here, at least in Spain, is fantastic. And Jason, you created the 20-Minute Vibe Project. To start, what exactly do you mean by vibe? Can you define it? I was looking at the dictionary because we all feel the vibe, but I need a definition for
Right, right.
our listeners, so please.
So a basic definition that I often use is that the vibe is the exchange of energy between you and other people. So again, the vibe is the exchange of energy between you and other people. Now, examples of that are expansive. So for instance, think about going on a first date, right? And on that first date, one of the ways we evaluate that date is the connection we have between ourselves and the other person, right? And then sometimes, though, we use the word vibe to understand that connection. So it was a good vibe, it was a romantic vibe, a sexual vibe, a friendly vibe, or a bad vibe, or a weird vibe. But that's one way of thinking about this. Another example would be thinking about going to a musical concert, and you're there with thousands of people. and you're all listening to the same music, you're all in rhythm with each other, you're all in sync with each other, and there's a kind of collective vibe that's happening on the dance floor, etc., and your body's actually pulsing together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or think about a sporting event, right? So you're there with thousands of other people, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50,000 other people. It's the end of the game. Your favorite team is losing. You need one more score, one more point, and all of a sudden they do it and they win the game. And the entire stadium goes crazy. And you feel the electricity pulsing through that stadium. Well, that's a vibe. But there are also not so friendly vibes, not the good vibes. So think of a bad work meeting, right? And you can cut the tension with a knife, right? Well, that's a certain kind of mood or atmosphere in that room that you can feel with your body. Likewise, think about having a heated argument with one of your best friends or a family member. And the vibe between you and the other person is off for a few hours, even a few days. If something's not right, you're not connecting anymore, you feel sad or depressed. All those examples are times when we say, well, that was a vibe that we can feel and experience. So
Mm-hmm.
again, it's the exchange of energy between you and other people.
Mm-hmm. So is it purely an emotional response, or is there something more tangible to it?
Well, when I give the definition of the exchange of energy between you and other people, there are different ways to think about that energy. And a lot of it has to do with how you see the world. In other words, what is your worldview? So, for instance, is that energy, is it a physical phenomenon or a metaphysical phenomenon? Is it material or immaterial? Is it scientific or is it spiritual? Or maybe it's all these things, or maybe something else altogether, right? And I pose it as a question because I don't want to dictate to other people how they interpret the vibe, right? I'm trying to invite listeners to think about this for themselves. So most people do use the word vibe on a regular basis, right? And so myself, as a teacher, as an intellectual, as a professor, I'm trying to get other people to think for themselves, like, how do you conceptualize this thing that we call a vibe?
Yes, I use the vibe a lot. And when we get certain vibes from other people, like when someone gives off a weird or uncomfortable vibe, what do you think is actually happening in that moment? Because we know that there are good vibes and bad vibes. First of all, how can we differentiate between vibe and intuition? This is the first question.
All right, well, let's begin with that one. So the difference between vibe and intuition. So a lot of people will use these words interchangeably, which is fine. I understand why. But I think of them as different sides of the same coin. They are related, but not exactly the same.
Mhm.
So intuition, I think of it as it's your ability of your subconscious mind to communicate with your conscious mind. So think of your body, and your body's always in some kind of environment, always in a certain kind of situation, right? But then your conscious mind, though, is always focused on something very particular. It's like a flashlight. When you hold that flashlight, your attention goes where that light goes. But there's more going on in the environment than that flashlight. And so if you allow your body, your subconscious mind, to communicate with your conscious mind, that's intuition, where your gut instinct knows more about the moment and situation than your conscious mind. Right? So that's intuition. A
Mhm.
vibe, though, is more on the outside of your body. It's literally, so I think of it as your body is radiating or emanating a certain kind of energy out into the world. And you can pick up
Mhm.
on that energy from other people.
And on the flip side, when you get a really good vibe from someone or a place, how can we tap into that positive energy more intentionally to enhance our own mood and experience?
Sure. Well, actually, I'll back up for a second and I'll circle back to that question.
Yeah.
So earlier you're talking about bad vibes and negative vibes. And I'm glad you mentioned that because there's a common saying that something like good vibes only. Right? You see it on t-shirts and bumper stickers, right? And I
Yeah.
understand why people say that, right? We all want good vibes and no one likes bad vibes. But as human beings, though, we need to be honest with ourselves and realize there are all kinds of vibes, good vibes, bad vibes, chill vibes, weird vibes, etc. All right. So just accept that for a fact that like there are all kinds of vibes. Now, in terms of tapping into like the good vibe or enhancing that good vibe, there's a few
Mhm.
steps I walk people through. All right. So one, be aware of your body. In other words, how does your body feel internally, externally, emotionally, psychologically, all those kinds of things. Then second, be aware of your surroundings. In other words, where are you? Who are you with? Right? What is happening in your immediate environment and surroundings? And then third, try to soften your ego or soften your perception. In other words, think less with your conscious mind, and again, think more with your bodily knowledge and bodily knowing. Then from there, though, try to imagine or envision your body radiating a certain vibe or a certain energy, right? And then from there, lean into that energy, lean into that exchange of energy. And so, if what you're talking about here with a good vibe or a positive vibe, once you feel that, appreciate it, take it in, and then try to kind of reflect it back onto the world. So I'm getting good energy towards me. How can then I reflect that good energy back out to the world? And I'd say that's one way to enhance the good vibe that you're experiencing of that moment.
Yes, and maybe gratitude as well. Yeah,
Oh
you.
yes, gratitude. Yes, yes, 100%. Yeah. I was talking to a friend the other day about this. So I just turned 50 a month ago in September. So I turned 50 years old.
Wow.
And and so of course with most people when they turn 50, it's kind of a head trip. You kind of get freaked out a little bit. But for me though, it was also a real deep sense of gratitude. Like, wow, I've made it this far. I really love my life. I appreciate being alive. I have good friends, good family members. I get to have interesting conversations, right? And so gratitude, I think, is a big part. If you want to cultivate a good vibe for yourself, I think gratitude is one place to start.
Scientifically, as a professor, is there a scientific or psychological basis for the idea of vibes, or is it just a experiential concept?
Mhm. I would say it's both and depends on how you want to look at it. So my work is more theoretical, more philosophical. So at an early age in graduate school and thereafter, I actually created my own philosophy of the vibe, referred to as bodily emanation. So the idea that the body emanates or radiates an actual tangible feeling that is experienced and felt by other bodies. But that's more like a philosophical paradigm that I created. Scientifically, there are studies done that the body radiates electromagnetic energy that can be detected from a few feet from beyond the body, right? So there is some type of physical energy that emanates from the body. Then you can also think about this in other kinds of ways. So, for instance, all sound is a physical vibration. So, two objects come into contact with each other, and when that happens, they vibrate the air molecules around those objects. And those air molecules then float through the air, travel through the air, enter my eardrums, and then my brain turns the sound into meaning. So, there are different kinds of vibes, right? So earlier when I was saying, is the vibe physical or metaphysical, material or immaterial, scientific or spiritual, depends on what aspect of the vibe you want to look at. So on the one hand, there are physical and material vibes that can be proven scientifically. On the other hand, though, I think there is the possibility of metaphysical vibes or spiritual vibes that we experience intuitively.
So this vibe would be a kind of energy that we capture from others or from the environment?
Yes, correct. Yes, right. So again, within my philosophical work that I've done, I think of the vibe not just as a individual body giving off a vibe, but rather all of our bodies are giving off a vibe all the time. It's just like you have a personality. Well, you have a core personality. You also have a core vibe or a core energy that other people can detect and experience. But then if you think about it as a collective phenomenon, it's not just my vibe or your vibe, but right now in this conversation, we are generating a collective vibe. And that is true in terms of you and your friends, you and your family members, or again, going back to the experience of a musical concert or a sporting event, right? So there are individual vibes, but also collective vibes that we can experience and tap into.
Mhm. I hope you are feeling a good vibe in our conversation right now.
Yes, this is definitely a good vibe. I'm enjoying myself. It's a fun conversation.
Wonderful. And your project, the 20-minute vibe, it's all about helping people understand and articulate vibes. I was checking your website. I see that you offer some courses. And what inspired you to create this educational space? And what can people expect to gain from it?
Sure. Well, I'll back up to my earlier story here in terms of my life story. So when I was younger, in my late teens and early 20s, I was involved with lots of, let's say, subcultures or countercultures. So the early rave scene in New York City, or jam bands and following bands on tour when they go for concerts, or underground house parties, things like that. And in these subcultures, everyone was using the word vibe. But at some point, I realized no one was actually explaining or defining the vibe. So at a very early age, around the age of 19 or 20, I took up an intellectual interest in the vibe and like, well, what do we mean by this? Then I wrote my first paper on the vibe as a college student in a class on nonverbal communication. Then I went to graduate school and used my master's thesis and my doctoral dissertation to construct my own philosophy of the vibe. Now, flash forward though, I don't know, 25 years later, where I'm at now, and I just want to find a way to share my knowledge about the vibe with other people in a way that's accessible. So most people aren't going to study the vibe for 20 or 30 years, but I have been doing this.
Oh.
And I do think, though, a lot of people are interested in the vibe, but they don't know where to begin. So my website, the 20minutevibe.com, right, it offers up short essays, short videos, self-paced video courses in ways that are accessible to the average person. It's not me talking to other college professors or academics, but rather sharing my knowledge with everyday people that hopefully can appreciate what they're learning and experiencing in terms of the vibe.
Yes, that's very, very interesting. I was checking your website. I was like, I want to try it.
Awesome.
I remember you mentioned a funny story where a club doorman said your vibe was all wrong. Was after this situation that you started studying vibes?
No, actually, so to back up for a moment here. So I was in graduate school at the time. So I'm originally from North Jersey, 25 miles south of Manhattan or New York City. And then for graduate school, I went out to Illinois in the middle of America in the Midwest. And so it was towards the end of my graduate career. I was already working on my dissertation and writing this philosophy about the vibe. I had a break. I think it was summer break. I came back home to see my friends. We went to New York City to go to a club, a nightclub, a dance club. And we're waiting online. If you've never been to New York City, I know you have, but in terms of your listeners, New York can be very exclusive, right? You have to wait in line behind a red velvet rope. There's a doorman, and they determine who gets in, who does not get in. So it's our turn. We get up to the front of the line, and this doorman walks over. He looks me up and down, and he says, "You have to step out of line. You can't go in." And my friends are like, "What's going on? Like, why can't we get in?" And they tell us, "Well, his vibe is all wrong." And of course, we all thought this was hilarious because I'm studying vibes. I'm like the vibe guy. And the doorman said, "No, your vibe's all wrong. You can't come in." So I thought it was funny. Like, I didn't take offense to it. I just thought it was so ironic given the situation that we all just started laughing really hard. It was awesome.
Yes, what a coincidence. Yes. Ooh. Do you think animals pick up on human vibes?
Yes, I do. So when I was younger, working on this back in grad school, I said no at the time. I thought it was just a human phenomenon. But then as I matured and got older and had different life experiences, I definitely think that animals give off a vibe and they can also pick up on a vibe, right? If you ever had a pet, so I grew up with pets, with cats and dogs, there's no doubt that they communicate through vibes, that they feel our vibes, we feel their vibes. We know when they need something without saying anything, like going outside, getting food or whatever it is. Yeah, so I definitely think that animals give off a vibe. There's no doubt about that.
Yes, I'm asking this because my sister's dog, it's incredible. It's sometimes like 5 people arrive, and there is always someone that he doesn't like. And it's so incredible because he doesn't even get close to that person.
Yeah.
And then I asked the person, "Do you have a dog? Do you like dogs?" And those people said, "I don't like dogs. I don't like dogs exclusively, not all."
Right.
And I thought it was so interesting. And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to ask Jason because this is the feeling I have. This is the
Right.
vibe I have." They have.
Well, that person obviously doesn't like the vibe of dogs, and the dogs don't like that person's vibe, right? So it's mutual, right? In a sense, this person is not for me. Bad vibes.
Yes. And you are currently working on a book. Am I correct?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Can you give us a sneak peek?
Yeah, sure. So, tentatively, the book's entitled "Vibe Talk: How and Why People Talk About Vibes," and it's an attempt to chronicle how people talk about vibes in daily life. Everything from sports and music to spiritual experiences to politics to new age spiritual movements, things like that. But also then trying to understand what is driving this vocabulary, this terminology, etc. Right. So in other words, why are we compelled to talk about vibes on a regular basis. And so I'm trying to investigate that and understand that. It's more of an academic book, but I'm trying to write it in a way that's accessible to the average person. I started working on it over the summer.
Mhm.
I made good headway. So if there are any publishers out there who want to publish a book on the vibe, please contact me and we can get in touch and see what goes on.
Yes, and I hope you come back to talk to us about this book.
Definitely, I'll put it on my list, 100%, yes.
Yes, awesome. And for those who want to improve how they connect with the vibe of a room or a group, what practical tips or advice would you offer to help them become more attuned to the energy around them?
Well, I think the first step is to open yourself up to the possibility that vibes are a real phenomenon, right? And again, like I said earlier, rather than just always thinking with your conscious mind and your conscious ego, try to soften that a little bit and open yourself up to things that are happening below the threshold of consciousness, right? So small moments here and there, slight feelings here and there, right? What's going on in your larger environment that you can tap into, that you can experience. And then from there, though, trying to learn how to use the vibe as a form of communication. Right? So if you want to be more self-confident, more self-assured, more charismatic, or more positive in general, how might you cultivate a certain kind of personality, a certain kind of outlook, and also a certain kind of energy and vibe about you that then attracts people to you in the same kind of way?
Hmm. Yes, I remember I went for a work interview, and one day before I went to the place, I was looking around to see how was the vibe. And my mom said, "Why are you going there?" I said, "No, because," she said, "it's tomorrow." I said, "No, I want to understand the environment. I want to feel the vibe." And I didn't know vibe was all about this that you were talking about, was more like, let me see the environment. But it's a very interesting subject. Jason, admire your work. Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us, like sharing your knowledge. This has been a truly eye-opening conversation about how we can better understand and communicate through vibes.
Well,
And
thank you for having me on. I enjoyed the conversation. It was a fun conversation. You're a wonderful person. You give off a very good vibe, a very inviting vibe, and so it was a nice conversation. I appreciate it.
oh, you make my day. You too. You too. This smile is contagious. Before we wrap up, so when are you planning to publish your book?
Oh, well, it depends when I finish it. So I'm hoping to
Mhm.
finish the book in the next couple of months, and
Mhm.
at the same time trying to look for a publisher. So I would
Yes.
say ideally within the next year or so, but it depends on the publishing process. So I'm not sure if your listeners know, but once you get a book contract, it takes a while for it to actually get published. I mean, it has to go through edits, revisions, things like that. So it can take a while. But hopefully, though, within next year or so, it'll be out.
And I also want to tell our listeners that Jason was featured in our magazine, The Relatable Voice, and he's going to be featured again in December. So don't forget to grab our free magazine at www.relatable-media.com. And thank you very much for listening. And Jason, I hope I can come back to Jersey again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified when the next one is posted. Please rate this podcast and share it with your friends. Thank you for listening, and remember, relationships don't exist. Relating does. Until next time.